Hello and welcome to the Unique CPA with your host, Randy Crabtree. We're committed to creating a thriving community of accounting professionals who are physically and mentally healthy, fulfilled, and energized by their work. Our ultimate goal is to elevate the reputation of the accounting profession and vastly improve the lives of those in it. The Unique CPA is brought to you by Tri-Merit, the specialty tax professionals.
Today, our guest is Dan Hood. This is not Dan's first time on the show. I think we're at number 3 now, but that's because he is such a great guest. So looking forward to today. Dan, you all know, but Dan is editor-in-chief of Accounting Today. He also hosts the Accounting Today podcast. And coming up for year number 2, the Growth Forum Conference, which will be May 21st and 22nd of 24 in San Diego, which I will be at and looking forward to it. Dan, welcome to the Unique CPA again.
I'll just say thanks for having me back. I'm psyched. At some point, I'm just gonna be on every episode, just lurking in the background. You know, I could be your Andy Richter. I could be your Ed McMahon.
We need that. That's a great call.
Yeah.
Let's go. You know what? I think we make a pretty good team. We need to think about that. All right. But I digress. But I like the Andy Richter. Ed you did multiple generations there too.
And I'll throw this out. The digressions are coming fast and furious. Andy Richter played a CPA on a TV show. His TV show, he was a CPA. That was his character. And they actually reached out to us because they were like, can we have copies of Accounting Today on his desk? And, what would we need to do? Yeah. He was a tax preparer and a CPA.
And was that called Andy or something? I kind of remember it.
It was Andy Richter Controls the Universe.
Okay.
And it lasted for 6 episodes. It did not do terribly well, but
he is funny though. All right. So we're going to work on that.
And they got accounting well. I mean, they understood it. They had a whole thing about tax season and they understood the world. They knew the life. So they'd done their research.
Were they putting a negative spin on tax season at all, which we see a lot of people do? Or
Well, I would say they were putting an accurate spin on tax season. Let's put it that way. Yeah,
right.
He was busy. He was working late. So
all right. I'm going to have to go watch those 6 episodes. Anything with the name, with accountant theme or accountant in it? We all, as accountants, we all had to watch Ben Affleck and in the Accountant.
Exactly. Got to support.
And then what was there? There was I think it was even maybe a BBC show. Was it BBC? There was some kind of sitcom out there about people working in an accounting firm. I never saw it. Is that something you heard of or no?
No, I got to look it up. That's cool.
Wait, you're the trivia guy. You're supposed to know these things. So I count on you for this.
I'm strictly North American trivia.
So. Okay. All right. Well, I might be wrong too on the BBC end. All right. Let's get back on track here.
We had a topic.
We did. I think we do have a topic. So, and I'll set the stage. We are going to talk today about the importance of community, the importance of getting together as a profession, as professionals, the importance of being able to rely on each other and help each other, all that kind of stuff. And we'll see where the tangents go, because we will have tangents for sure. But this one just came to me this morning, and you and I talked briefly before we started recording. But honestly, everything seemed to change for me, and the importance of the profession and all these things that happened when I started hosting the Unique CPA podcast, which is almost 4.5 years ago now. And you've been doing it a lot longer than I have. I'm not saying you're older than me. I'm just saying you've been doing it longer than me. And so I thought, let's just have a discussion around what podcasting at the beginning has done for, what we feel is done for us personally, and what we think it helps, maybe others in the profession. When did the unique, that's mine. When did Accounting Today podcast start?
I think just about 5 years ago. So we've been doing on and off podcasts for a long time, maybe as long as 10 years, but it hadn't been a formal thing. It was sort of whenever we had, someone we were talking to, but sort of more formally, I'd say 5 or 6 years ago. So not that much older than Unique CPA. So.
All right. And then for me personally, the podcast has just built this, community. Community will probably say a lot today that I never would have been part of, never met half these people, more than half that I know today, which for me is extremely important that I've been able to develop these friendships and community with people. Do you see something similar? Has podcasting, changed you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's that those relationships are amazing, and you wouldn't think it because you're like, well, it's such a technological thing, right? We get on a virtual call and we talk through screens and everything like that, and then it all gets sent out as a digital file that people listen alone in their car or while they're working out and stuff like that. You wouldn't think that it would create that connection, but it really does. Part of it is for us as hosts, right? You're in people's ears. You're literally like they're alone with you when they're listening to you in many cases, right? It's not a communal activity, but there's sort of your voice is in their ears, and people talk like, I listen to you all the time. And you're like, I don't talk to you all the time. And then you're like, no, actually, I guess I do. I just didn't realize I was talking to you. And so it's neat. It really does create that sort of, and I have this way with podcasts that I listen to, the same sort of thing. It's like, you feel like you know the host, you feel a connection to them. But there's also the whole process of just talking to somebody for 20 minutes to 30 minutes in depth on a topic that just creates a little bit of connection, right? As you said, community, right? That feeling of, I know this person, we have a connection. And that's huge for, well, it's huge for any profession, I think, but for accounting, I think particularly because so much of an accountant's work is we talk about the client relationship and how important that is and interacting with the clients. But really, most of the time, the work you're doing for clients, they're not there, right? You're alone in your office.
Right.
You're doing your work on your own. You're not having that communication, that interaction. And so any of that is great. So yeah, the podcast, just in terms of opening up my understanding, just basic understanding of all the issues in accounting, but also creating a lot of relationships with both people I'm interviewing and people who are listening. I'm sure you've had the same thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's many podcasts I point to as like that specific conversation that's such a big impact on me and the direction I've gone for the last 4.5 years now that it never would have happened without somebody else suggesting to me that we start a podcast and somehow deciding I should be the one to host it, which I never considered in a million years until they said it. So yeah, it's been big for me personally. I want to ask real quick about yours. You said, for 10 years, maybe doing it overall, but more structured the last 5. If I recall correctly, when you first started doing it for the longest time, you actually had people in studio with you. Is that right?
Yep. That was primarily that. I think for the first 2 years or so, that was most of it. We would do occasional ones. When we really started, a lot of them were over the phone.
Mm-hmm.
But when we started more formally, as you said, that 5-6 years ago, we tried to have everybody only have people into the studio just for audio quality. Audio quality's gotten so much better,
right?
Particularly through the pandemic, right? Everyone's got better microphones. Everyone got better. Just the platforms, right? Zoom, we happen to use Zoom, but its audio quality is much better. There's others. Everyone's improved their quality that way. So, yeah, we used to have it in person, and that was, as you say, that was great to have the person there because that, in the end, is what it is. Right? It's all about creating these conversations and talking to people. And so even now, when we do things over Zoom, every once in a while, our producers would be like, if you want to turn off your camera, that'll help preserve bandwidth. Sometimes you're talking to someone and they're remote or they're on Wi-Fi in a train station or something like that. And our producer would say, if you want to turn your camera off. And I'm always want to say, no, don't. I want to be able to see them. I want to see the person I'm talking to, just because it's a very different experience. We talked about that sort of disembodied voice coming out of a digital speaker. But when you're actually looking and talking to someone, it creates a very different feel. And I think that feeling, that conversational feeling translates to even for people, as I said, who are listening in their car or through their headphones while they work out. You still get that sense of I'm listening to a real conversation.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's same thing. Somebody will say, I can turn my video off if that helps. I'm like, no. I like seeing the facial expressions. I like that. Even though we're not together, it feels like we're connected together right now. And I think that's just such I agree with you that I think it actually translates into a different conversation with being able to see each other. So that's important. So let's pivot a little bit. I want to get to some more things on the whole aspect of getting together. That's one reason I asked that question about that. But before we even get to that, there's other forms of now being able to communicate, to educate. Podcasting isn't the only one. We've seen, a bunch of people doing TikTok and you having their YouTube channels and just social media in general from, Twitter, I guess X now, which I don't understand that whole change, but that's I'm not going to digress.
No one understands that.
Yeah. And it's not like x.com. It's still twitter.com, isn't it? Or whatever.
I think so. Yeah.
So
that's weird.
But
anyway, yeah.
Okay. But oh man, I can go 100 different directions in a second.
That'll be my 5th appearance. Will be dissecting that why it makes no sense.
But all the social media and all these platforms, I mean, what have you seen from that? Do you think this has helped the profession? Did it help the individuals? Is this an area that has, helped community building even through social media and that? What have you seen in there?
Absolutely. Yes, I would agree 100%. I think that is as you talk about all these things, I'm thinking about what they're really all those things are different ways of carrying on a conversation within the profession, right? Our podcasts, our podcasts are literally conversations, but they're also a conversation with the audience and with people out in the profession. But social media does the same thing when people send out TikToks, debunking weird tax information that's going out in other TikToks, right? That's a conversation. It's a back and forth and it's spreading the word. Social media, same way, X conversation. You see it all the time when people responding and sharing and responding and then keeping going in conversation, just rolling through in Twitter threads. Twitter threads. I can't even call them an X thread, but an X thread. Uh,
it sounds like a superhero there. We're doing X threads. It's the right? X-Men threads.
Marvel's going to start suing at some point. But all those ways, even blogs, right? I mean, just accounting firm blogs are ways of having conversations that for a long time there was it wasn't just the accounting profession, but nobody had ways to have these kind of conversations, right? There weren't that many ways to create a broad conversation. And now we have all the different kinds of social media that can be video and it can be written and it can be podcasts like we're doing. Then there's all, the more traditional form, right? Of, getting together in conferences, getting together in meetings, getting together for lunch, whatever the case may be. Just finding new ways to have conversations within the profession or around the profession, I think is a huge, huge, huge thing for everybody involved. It's just the more we can talk about what we're all doing and what's moving things forward and what's holding us back, I think it's great. And I think that having all these different ways to do it is great.
Yeah, I agree. I look at people like, Jason Statz with his social media, network he's created, and now a platform for people to get together. It's all about people getting together. You create it with social media, but then it expands beyond that. Duke Alexander Moore with his TikTok and his 4 million followers on that. Right. Laura Lynn Wilson and their TikTok.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking of. Yeah. He's all about correcting. That's why he got on, was to correct all those. Yep. It's like, the TikTok's full of tax lies and I need to fix that.
Right. Oh, yeah. And same thing, I think Laura Lynn Wilson does the same thing with TikTok, I think, as well, as where she is. And so all these things. But then, I probably would not have met any of them without podcast, without social media, and now I've got to meet all of them. But the cool thing is that we go from recognizing people on the podcast and these other mediums to feeling, as you mentioned, kind of feeling like we know them. Yep. Because you see them so much and you can relate to them, and especially if they're doing something that you're passionate about. But for me, we built this community with the Unique CPA during the pandemic. But then when I got back out to the real world, to conferences, that's where these relationships really blossom. And that's where you really get to know being out and being able to hug somebody at a conference has made such a difference. And so one of the things that we really wanted to talk today about was conferences. So we're actually to the subject now, but I think we set that up.
2 to 3 days later.
Exactly. It was 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever. We got to the conference now. And so from a community standpoint, conferences in person, I just don't think you can beat it. I think from that standpoint, conferences, I tell people all the time, conferences have changed my life, getting in together with people. And so let's talk about real quick about your conference, because there's a couple things. The Firm Growth Forum, you had it for the first time last year in San Diego. It is going to be again this year in San Diego. Kind of give me the origin of coming up with this idea and of the conference, and sure. Did it take a year, 2 years, 6 months, and how did it come about?
So you pointed towards some of what sparked it was that coming out of the pandemic, our sense was that there was an appetite for getting back together, right? Getting back out, traveling, being willing to get together and go to professional conferences for all the reasons that I think we're going to get into more deeply in a bit about why they're great, why they're so valuable. As you say, that personal interaction, seeing people, realizing that people have legs. They actually have actual legs. They're not just
dimensions,
toys, right? Yeah, and they can move around. It's that's huge. And we felt there was an appetite for it. And I got to be honest and give full credit to Accounting Web, because they had a conference the year before we started and had done very well with it. And they weren't able to continue it. And so we said, that was a great we've been thinking about this. They did a great job of it, and they sort of proved the case. And so we jumped in to say, there is a space for accountants to come together and talk about all the issues that matter to them, and to focus very specifically on growth, which we thought for us, that was the topic we think that is a big driver for a lot of accounting firms. We saw, maybe take a little bit of step back, saw as people became more comfortable traveling and getting back together, out meeting up in person, we saw some of the great accounting shows out there, and there really are some great ones. They became really big, right? One of the things was they came back and they wanted to be really big. And so, you think of the Engages and the Scaling New Heights, which I think I get a lot out of those shows and really like them, but they're huge.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw, and they have a lot there. Their size is one of the things that makes them great. But it also rules out some other things, right? And we thought, a smaller, a little bit more intimate show where people have a lot more chance to talk amongst a smaller, more selected group of people. In our case, we're looking at firm leaders and potentially future firm leaders who are looking to grow firms, from, it will depend on your firm size, but, anywhere from 7 million to 20 million to 30 million, whatever the case may be, because you're looking to grow and you're looking to take it from that small firm size up to just what ends up being a very different level and a different type of accounting firm. And so we're aiming to have the show be all about that. And like I said, that fits for a small group of people, because then they can share, talk amongst themselves. It's all about the conversation, right? Everything we've been talking about is different forms of conversation, whether it's podcast or social media. And having that live in-person conversation, right? That's the ultimate form of conversation, is a literal conversation that you have, in the corridors of a show. So that's I got far afield of it, but
You're good.
That's what drove it, was that sense of there's a need for that kind of close interaction at a relatively small show where you have a chance to really talk to a lot of people and have in-depth conversations with people about the issues that matter to you and the solutions that will help you move forward. And that was what drove us. And we started last year, did pretty well, and we're looking forward to this year as well.
Yeah, you did. And I was very fortunate to be at last year's. I was very fortunate to actually get to speak a few times at last year, and had a great time. But what you said about the just getting together, and even the classrooms are great. You learn a lot, but the in-between sessions where you're just talking to people are and you said it, as important, if not more, so in my opinion. And I can specifically remember at the hotel last year in San Diego, being out on the balcony, having multiple conversations, meeting people I've never met before, and just learning things from them, and feeling the sense of, really, they probably said it 5 times already, the sense of community with somebody that, hey, yeah. And that's one of the things when you're with people, because as professionals, we, especially in the accounting profession, although that's the only profession I really know, but especially in the accounting profession, we always feel, or often feel, like this is something we're specifically dealing with ourselves, and nobody else is dealing with this. And how come this other person has everything put together, but I don't? And then when you're out there, you find, okay, they struggle with this part of the tax code, or they struggle with managing these people. And so do you see that getting together helps just from a, hey, I really do belong to this community?
Yeah.
That's I think, important.
I'm not alone. Yeah, no, it's huge, right? Because think about it, as your accountants, who do you spend time with? You don't spend a lot of time with other accountants. You spend a lot of time with your clients who have no idea, right? Half the reason they hire you is they have no idea what you're doing and how it works and any of that. So there's I don't want to call it the sort of existential loneliness of the accountant, but there's an element of that, right? Of am I doing this right? Am I having this problem because I'm doing something wrong, or because I'm bad at this, or why am I having this problem, or how do I solve this problem, right? More importantly. And I think, as you say, when you go and you talk to everybody else, you say, oh, wait, we're all having this problem. This isn't me. And if we're all having this problem, then we can probably all solve it. And I would say that to me is even more important. I mean, I think it's absolutely no question that sense of, I belong to a profession and all the members of my profession are like me, and we share the same issues and same concerns and the same goals and that sort of stuff. But I think the element you said, that accountants a lot like other professions, and it is in that case. But there's also an element of where I think it's very different from other professions, which is that accountants will tell other accountants anything. Mm-hmm. They love to share what's going on with them because they want to make their profession better. I don't know if it's a conscious decision, but accountants will tell other accountants things about their business and about how they're doing things and what problems they're having and how they're solving problems that in no other profession or industry would people share that way, right? They would treat everything, all of this as proprietary information and they would never share. So we ask an accountant, hey, show me your business plan. They'd be like, oh, sure, here it is. And they'll hand it to you and say, this is how much revenue we made and this is how we broke it down. I'm not saying that they're giving away the store or anything like that, but there is a willingness to share among accountants that is wonderful. I mean, I say it a lot. People probably heard me say this a lot because I'm constantly surprised by it and delighted. It's super helpful for me as a journalist, but it's also to watch accountants share with one another and give each other insights and information and tips and strategies and best practices and all that sort of stuff. It's amazing. And it's one of the things I love most about covering the profession, partially because it makes my job very easy. I don't have to say, hey, would you tell me this? And have somebody say, I'm not going to tell you that. That's crazy. Why would I share that with you? That's how I make my living. But accountants are super invested in the profession and super invested in the success of the profession and the success of other accounting firms. And I think it's great. And as you say, when that's what comes out when you get together, right? The sense, one, I'm not alone because we're all sharing these issues. But two, we're all sharing solutions on how to solve and to move forward together.
I agree completely. And one of the things that you just said about, the openness to sharing your knowledge is kind of a mantra of mine. Because you're just going to help everybody and yourself at the same time. If I share the fact that I can educate on research and development tax credits, that's not going to stop me from getting more business. That's probably going to help me get more business because they'll understand that, hey, he's the expert. Or I'll say our project managers are the experts. I can just talk about it. They actually do the work.
Tri-Merit, it's full of experts.
Tri-Merit's the experts. But when you do that, when you share, it just builds everybody up. Hey, I can educate somebody on how they identify saving $500,000 for a tax client. Now, they're not going to be able to do the calcs and everything, but they just now became a hero in that client's eyes because they just saved them, I'm picking a number, $500,000 on taxes. So there's nothing wrong with that. It helps everybody. It helps the client. It helps the tax advisor. It helps us. So I agree completely. And then one other thing on that, because this ties in two things that you said. So social media and sharing. So Logan Graff, I don't know if you're familiar with Logan, but Logan's a YouTuber and on Twitter /X. And I think he started last year, maybe 2 years ago, where he basically just goes through his financial statement, his personal business financial statement with everybody on YouTube. He's going to explain, here's what we did this last year. Here's the profit we had. Here's the hours we worked. All this stuff. And he's new. He started his firm recently, but there's so many people that talk about that episode that he puts out on YouTube and shares what they're going through. He probably gets advice from others from that too. So it's helpful for him. So I love that knowledge sharing part of things for sure.
It's amazing. It makes everybody better. And it is, and I think this keeps bringing us around to it is easiest in person, right? It's easier to do or easier to get it started in person, right? It's easier. We say it's not like accountants are just handing out their spreadsheets left and right and all that sort of stuff. But, you develop a certain amount of trust. Now, accountants tend to trust other accountants or other CPAs just because they know, hey, we all belong to the same profession. We went through the same test, et cetera. But you have that personal connection with someone that you've met in person, or even if you've met them over a podcast or a virtual call, you have a little bit more trust just from having built that relationship in person. And then you're able to then develop it, later on. It's easier to email someone your financial statements if you've met them in person, or easier to email them your proprietary information when you've met them in person. And you could say, I know this guy, he's not going to steal it and run me out of business.
Yep. All right. So I think we've established the fact of how important getting together in person is and how much that helps us with everything. I just want to go into a story real quick that what you said about Accounting Web and their conference from 2022, I think is when it was. Yeah, May of 22. Yep. Seth Feinberg was running that. And I saw that conference too. And I had FOMO. I'm like, wow, this is cool. Why am I not there? How did I not know about this? Right. And so I looked at that, but then was very sad when I saw it wasn't going to continue because I had said to our marketing team, hey, we got to go do this one next year. We got to be part of this. And so what you mentioned that you looked at that as kind of setting the stage for how important it is to get together, and the idea for the growth forum came out of that. Same thing with our conference, Bridging the Gap conference. Right. The same idea came. I'm like, there's a need now because unfortunately Accounting Web isn't continuing with this. And I honestly at the time thought, and there's a date available in May. Maybe we should take that date. which I'm glad we didn't.
We did the same thought. We're like, yep, that's a good time.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I am honestly glad we didn't have time to do it because I think I started coming up with deciding to do that like 3 months before that date would have been there.
Right.
But we pushed ours back to August, now moved it up to July this coming year. But that need was there, and I think it's been shown with what your conference was last year with our conference. So let's just talk a bit about the two conferences and just what we're looking to do, who we're looking to attract, and what we're looking for people to get out of it. Let's start with the Firm Growth Forum.
All right. Like I said, it's in the thing. It's about firm growth and it's about enabling that. And there's just sort of the more we look at this, the more it becomes clear that there is this cohort of firms that are looking to go from, it's 2-3 partners, maybe as many as $5 to $7 million worth of revenue. And that's how you can make a very comfortable firm out of that, or anything smaller, make a comfortable living. And there's no need to grow larger than that. But there's a cohort of firms that are at that size that want to grow significantly. And if they're going to do that, they have to change in fairly significant ways. It's a bunch of different things about technology and about how you hire and recruit people and bring them on board. It's really how you structure your firm and manage it and think about it, and how you manage your partner group and manage accountability and all those sorts of things. There's all these changes that come into place when you want to go beyond that, when you want to grow from 7 million to 15 million, from 15 million to 20 million, from 20 million to 40 million. There's a set of structures and best practices and strategies and tactics that you need to implement and changes you need to make in the way you run your business. And that's sort of our overall focus, is hopefully to give people the tools they need to be able to manage that transition in a bunch of different areas. So there's technology involved, there's management and corporate structure, and part of it is you really almost want to become a corporation as opposed to a partnership. You can still be a partnership, but you need to think a little less like a partnership and a little more like a corporation. There's elements of recruiting, because we know that's a big issue for recruiting and retention, both big issue for accounting firms. So basically helping them with all those things. We also have some other areas we're touching on. Artificial intelligence, such a huge issue, and so few of us know where it's going to go or what it's going to do. That's something we're going to be focusing a little bit on, because we think, among other things, that handled properly, that can turbocharge some serious growth if you're willing to embrace it, work with it. We've talked about the need to get with AI before it tramples all of us, because if you're using it, you can do better. But so that's our focus, right, is to help firms take it to the next level, because there's a lot of great accounting firms out there that are very comfortable where they are. They're doing great business, serving their clients well, making good livings. But then there's firms that want to, get bigger and grow, and not just for growth's sake, but because for all the things that brings along, right? The bigger reach, more revenue, ability to do more things for your people. So we're looking to enable that, and then at the same time, as we've been talking all through this, just get people talking, get accounting firms talking to other accounting firms, sharing their ideas. We love, one of my favorite parts of the days was, at the end of the day, we'd have these round tables where you just get a bunch of 10 seats. 9 of them would be accountants, and 1 of them would be one of our staff, sort of just to facilitate it, but just everybody talking amongst themselves. And usually after about 3 minutes, the facilitator would just sort of sit back and be like, "You guys are great. You guys are taking care of it. You talk amongst yourselves." And I think that's amazing. And they were sharing fantastic ideas. I was like scribbling ideas down furiously as they're listening to them. So that's what we're at. So, fortunately, I'm glad that we didn't have overlapping dates, because I went to Bridging the Gap last year, and it was great. And I think you cover some of the same ideas, but there's just a different feeling there, and just as great. Just as great. I'm not going to say it's greater than the Firm Growth Forum. Just as great. They're two evenly matched, brilliant things. Fortunately, they never have to compete.
I agree.
But I don't know if you want to talk more about Bridging the Gap, because I think people should know about that.
Yeah,
Suddenly I'm taking over like I'm the host. Tell us more about that, Randy. Randy's like, it's my show. Shut up.
I've had podcast hosts get on here before and they take over, which I have no problem with.
It's so
you
hard
can
not
take
to.
over all you want. Yep. Yeah. No, but plus you're so much better at it than I am, so it doesn't matter. So this would be from now on. Actually, I'm going to hand the reins to you.
I just talk faster. That's all. That's my one skill. I speak.
You're actually slowing down today. This is good.
I'm trying. Every time I talk, some people are like, "You are way too quick. Stop. Slow down." Anyway.
Oh, I do the same because we get excited. We're passionate about what we're doing, so that comes through. Yeah, I'll just real quick. Everything you said, that's what we try to do with Bridging the Gap. It's just, how do we be better overall as people and professionals and work less so we're not dealing with burnout and, have a better work-life balance and manage our firms and AI and technology. And actually, we're going to add a little tax track to ours this year just from a standpoint of that's really my thing as I talk
Yeah.
tax. So we
Sure.
figured, you know what? And Tri-Merit's thing, since Tri-Merit foots the bill for a lot of this, we thought we'd get a little cool tax stuff in there.
Right.
I don't know if you're familiar with Jordan Goodman is a salt expert out of
Mhm.
Chicago. He's going to just talk about salt and honestly, he is an unbelievably great presenter. And that's the other thing. And you and I'm sure would agree. Hey, there's a lot of very knowledgeable people out here, and getting that intersection between having great knowledge and having great presentation skills is the people we want because it
Right.
keeps it entertaining.
Right.
And so I know all the speakers you had last year were very entertaining. So I appreciated that. And so, yeah, very similar from the standpoint. Luckily, at least 2 months apart this year. Last year was about 3 months apart. We moved ours up to July this year, so 2 months apart. But looking forward to both. And
You're absolutely right. The way you're describing the show, there's a lot of overlap, right, in terms of that, how to run a practice better and all that stuff. But I would say one of the elements of your show that I really loved, and it's not the singular focus of it, but I think it's a neat accent to it, put it that way, is that you have a great focus on sort of the human side of all of this, right? It's important to grow. It's important to build a successful practice to serve your clients well, but it's also important to look after your own mental health and well-being and your employees' mental health and well-being, and to remember that we're all people and that we need to be careful of ourselves and to be careful of those who work with us. I think that was a neat, as I say, it's not the singular focus of the show by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a strong element of it. And I thought that was very cool because in part not just because it's nice, but because it's when it comes to recruiting and retention and all those sorts of things, it's hugely important, right, to make sure that you're not driving people out, right, you're not burning them out. That's a huge problem, and to be paying attention to that isn't just nice, it's super valuable for how you run a practice.
oh yeah, for sure. I appreciate you pointing that out. It is a passion of mine, mental and physical health as well, because I think it's so important to us as people, but it helps us in our job. Obviously, if we're burning out, that's not helping our clients at all. It's not helping us. It's not helping anybody we work with. So, making that a priority and actually even having a separate room at the conference that's a wellness room for the entire length of the conference, 2.5 days, is
Yeah,
something I'm pretty proud of.
it was great stuff.
And the one thing I wanted to point out what you said, because I wanted to talk about that, what you said, the end of the day, and that's what you call the wind down, right? Is that those sessions where it's a not
Wine,
wind?
WINE. Yeah.
Yeah.
It took me the longest time to understand that when our events team was like, they're going to have wine downs. I'm like, oh, you're winding down. They're like, no, wine, like
Yeah.
wine. And I'm like, like wine. And no, yeah, yeah.
But that
And they were great.
they were great, and that's the last thing I think we want to point out then is that fun is a big part of this, and
Yeah.
and what you guys did was fun, and hopefully we're going to get some Dan Hood karaoke this year at your conference. Is that going to happen?
Oh, you can't stop it. It's going to happen whether you want it or not. It's this. Oh, it'll be nuts.
All right. Well, I can't stress enough the fun aspect and the community and the knowledge sharing and the growth and everything else about your conference. I'm really looking forward to it. As we sit, we're about 3 months away from it. So, Dan, if anybody wants to find out any more about the conference, where would they look?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to conference.accountingtoday.com. That have all kinds of information on this year's conference. You can register. You can look at the speakers. You can look at the agenda. You can check out the venue, which is very cool. It's a different hotel than last year. We're psyched about that. But yeah, conference.accountingtoday.com, and that'll have all the information you need.
And one last thing, and I wasn't going to ask this because you've been on 3 times, and I've already asked you multiple times. But I just thought about this. I want to ask you. I always ask a question about the fun things you personally do because we just talked about fun, and we've got a couple of answers from you in the past. But the one thing is that you just had a really cool fun thing is you did a trip to Tanzania. Is that what it was?
Yeah. Yeah, that was insane. That's a once in a lifetime kind of bucket list kind of a thing. That was very exciting. I cannot stress enough how much everyone should go to someplace in Africa and do a safari kind of thing if you can, or just it's. I just constantly kept saying as I looked around, I'm like, this looks just like the nature documentaries, except I'm here. Like every time I looked at the nature documentary, you're like, oh, that's cool, but it's probably all fake. Probably all it's puppets and CGI. But then you're actually there. You're like, nope. That's what an elephant really looks like, and it's 5 feet away from me. Yeah, no, it was insane. It was the whole thing was very briefly. My sister a long time ago through work had been able to go on like a 2-day safari for she works at a company that did a lot of international travel, and my niece kept seeing pictures of this and saying, "Oh, I would love to go on that. I'd love to go on it." My sister said, "Well, if you graduate from college, when you graduate from college, we'll take you on a safari." And assuming as we all, my niece would never graduate from college, and even my niece was like, "Yeah, I'm not going to end up graduating from college," but then she did, which was great. So then my sister was like, "Hey, so we got to go on safari." So I'm like, "Well, if you're going, I'll come along."
Nice.
And it was really magical. And so it's really hard to explain how amazing it is. But when you're there in the place, and you're like, this is exactly what I would hope it would be, and more. It was very cool.
Yeah, well, I'll have to put that on the list. My wife and I love traveling. That is not something we've actually talked about it briefly, but that's I'm going to have to reach out for you for advice on that. Maybe someday we'll have to make that part of our itinerary.
Absolutely. I do not get a commission, by the way, on any of that. So I'm just saying everyone should go.
All right, Dan. Well, again,
actually, I have been hired by the Tanzanian government. But...
All right, full disclosure. All right, Dan. Well, again, it's always a pleasure. Thanks again for being on the Unique CPA.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today on the Unique CPA. You can find the show notes for today's episode and learn more about TriMerit at theuniquecpa.com. Remember to subscribe and leave a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting app. And join us next time for more expertise and insights on the Unique CPA. ProfessionalProductions.net